Hi everybody, welcome back to the 5-day challenge to grow your intuition. It is day 2. I say day, it is the deep dark middle of the night. It's actually 1:33 in the morning because I fell asleep with my baby and woke up really late and thought, oh, let's get shooting. So today I want to talk to you about symbolism. It is at the heart of intuition, interpreting signs, symbols, and the language, decoding the language of the universe. So my main point of focus is my personal muse and hero, Carl Jung, who you will probably have heard of. He was a phenomenal psychologist, philosopher, psycho-spiritual genius, no less. Now, as with most people, I don't take everything verbatim. I don't necessarily adhere to the whole, I don't even claim to know everything that he stood for, but the things that stood out for me in his school of thought were very much about how the world is a symbolic mirror of our psyche. So I'm going to explain that a little bit to you. I first came into contact with this serious dude at uni doing a wild module. All my wild modules were freaking amazing, and this one was called Myths, Mysteries and Symbols. How cool is that? Sounds like something else, straight out of Harry Potter. So of course I had to nab it, and we explored his thesis, his hypothesis. His entire kind of school of thought was very much based around symbolism and interpreting the symbolism in your life. So this was very much how he helped his clients. So if his client would come to him and say, he'd say, how's your week been? They'd be like, oh, it's been okay, but it's been a real bother. The dishwasher broke down and we had to get the plumber in to fix a leak and a block in the drain. He would be taking all these notes because he would then later be able to tie that in with their, basically the map of that person's individual psychological kind of territory at that time and the feedback that their environment is giving them. So this kind of ties in a lot with the law of attraction as well, like that which is like unto itself is drawn. So the idea that, well, it's not an idea, but the natural phenomenon that vibration entrains with similar vibration. So the dominant frequency will, well, keeping things simple, basically things that vibrate in a similar range will vibrate stronger together and notice each other and be drawn together. So, for example, if you've taken any of my other courses around manifestation, you'll know that one of my favourite ways to explain this is the tuning fork. So with a tuning fork to tune a piano, you'll have lots of different metal rods that are specifically, their resting resonance is specifically attuned to either A, B, C, D, D minor, etc. And nothing else. So when you strike that particular rod, it will vibrate at the frequency of, let's say, C, let's say middle C. And that means that when they're tuning the piano, the vibration that this fork emits will create the same, will cause everything else that is also a C to resonate with it, to vibrate at the same frequency. Everything else won't because it's out of range and it's not interested. It won't be picking up on the same, it won't make it agitate. Whereas anything that is C will. So that's how they know that the piano is tuned to C, because when they strike the chord, the same chord on the piano will also start to vibrate. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that there's a mirroring in our reality. So that which we are emitting vibrationally in our complex sort of energetic and psychological makeup, that unique signature frequency will be interacting with the environment, and we cause, it's like we rustle up in our environment everything that is like us. So we will agitate everything that is a similar frequency to us in our environment, which means we have a direct kind of feedback system that gives us a much clearer indication of where we're at than perhaps sometimes we can work out individually on our own. So to break that down into simple terms, Hugo. What am I talking about, Hugo? Sorry. Hugo is my 4-year-old son. Carl Jung is what I meant. To To be fair, young does have two of the same syllables or letters. It's late, can you tell? Oh, come on. I was doing so well, the cracks are starting to show. Yeah, so Carl Jung would have interpreted this dishwasher breakdown and the clog in the drains as all related to emotional blockages. Emotion being correlated with the waters, as symbolic in obviously the waterworks of the dishwasher and the plugs. They would have looked at that. What is getting stuck inside? What are you not processing? What do you need to pull out in order to have that free flow? And he would really delve deep into these connections, and I find that fascinating. So it was the first time I really started looking at my world fully symbolically, because his idea was very radical, that there is nothing in your environment that you can escape. There's nothing that you can separate from yourself. In fact, it's an impossibility, because everything is so completely relative and interlinked that you cannot, it's like in quantum physics, you cannot separate the observed phenomenon from the observer. The observer herself has that relationship with the observed phenomena, and therefore it affects how the phenomena shows up. For example, whether it collapses into a photon of a light particle or whether it remains in the potential state of a wave. That person and that person's expectations, or what you could say is what their energetic imprint kind of communicates before they have a chance to, will very much affect what they're observing, what they're interacting with, what they are looking at. So, what does that mean for us? Well, fair pupils, today we're going to be looking at our environment and interpreting it symbolically. So, we're not always that used to doing that, we'll be bemoaning the weather and, oh, we missed that train and all these things are going wrong and they're so arbitrary, or, maybe some great things happen or just strange things happen. And I'm so used to now interpreting what's happening in my world in a symbolic way that it makes it really impersonal in a way. It makes it actually everything a bit of an educational opportunity. So what I thought would be fun to stretch our muscles and our kind of expectations a little bit and experiment with our environment is to, wherever you find yourself now, or if now's not a good time, then just sit yourself in a random spot. You don't have to overthink it. And then I want you to do the following. So, set the scene. As you may know, I'm a cartomancer, which is a posh word for tarot reader. And I don't just use cards, I just read people's energy. I can basically take a lot of information in from sitting with a person. So divination is second nature to me now. And it doesn't stop at the cards, it doesn't stop at anything. You can use any opportunity as a divining opportunity. And of course this is massively interlinked with our intuition, because it's all about being able to gauge meaning from our environment, from our life, from what we are, our current situation. What action should I take now? What is the universe trying to communicate to me? Our angels, our spirit guides, the universe, however you want to interpret that spiritual otherness, is constantly communicating with us. And of course, we aren't always listening. So there are so many ways to have and start that conversation. So what I thought would be fun when I was thinking about how I wanted to start this video was that I did it myself. So this is going to be a good example. What I want you to do is you sit down exactly where you are, or in a quieter moment later in a random spot. You don't have to overthink it. And I want you to look around your environment and practice interpreting where you are symbolically. So you are literally just going to take the environment that you're in so that you get used to realizing that there is this constant opportunity to engage with your higher self, to allow that space to open, that sacred communication and that conversation to gauge insight. So I'm literally sat, I've kind of curated this square, but around me is a fair bit of mess. And mess in itself is obviously massively communicative. Let's not get started on mess, but there's a lot going on all the time, so I generate a lot of mess wherever I go. But right now, what I can see and what I have interpreted, I took some notes as well. I just thought I'll have a look around and see exactly what comes to mind, what speaks to me and my soul about what I can see. So I've got an upside down hoodie hanging up on the radiator. There are two buses, toy buses. There's a parrot cushion, there's a parrot blanket nearby. There's an old picture of my son's two printed hands. I've got a mantelpiece with three slightly sad looking pumpkins now. A plant that took a bit of a hit and is doing its best. My mirror, and I have a whale hat toy on top of a chunk of selenite and an unplugged piece of equipment, electrical equipment. And there's a ton of other stuff, but those are the things that I picked out. So the key is you'll kind of know, you'll get a sense for when it's time to stop. You don't need to A, overthink it, B, go overboard, or C, get obsessive. So this is never, you always want to create the opportunity. So right now we're going to declare this a divining space, right? So it's not about constantly being like, what does that mean? Maybe it's trying to tell me this, maybe it's trying to tell me that. This is all about trust in yourself first and foremost, so that you don't have to lean too far into symbols all the time, but you can just rest in peaceful, communion with yourself. And B, we open up the space with intention. So we go, right now I'm going to have a symbolic conversation with my environment. So I can tell you exactly what I gauged from that, from these things around me, okay? And these are meaningful to me. So with the upside down hoodie hanging upside down, I immediately felt that was very symbolic to me in the same way as the Hanged Man in the tarot card, which is all about flipping things on their head and looking at things from a fresh perspective, a change of outlook, sudden changes as well, that bring new insight, even if they can be uncomfortable, as well as it taking a step back and really observing your environment and creating that time to look at things differently, and possibly a bit of delay. As we're coming out of Mercury retrograde, that makes sense. Excuse me. The other thing with these two buses that are pointing in similar directions and are both in the same sort of spot, that very much spoke to me about opportunities. And what came to mind is all buses, there's none for an hour and they all come at the same time. And that's telling me that there are opportunities around the corner and to keep an eye out for them. It's also saying with the parrot cushion and the parrot blanket, you're going to need to speak up and use your voice in order to take advantage of these opportunities. That hand symbolism, that hand picture of my son that's just resting on one of the buses. I should probably show you, I'm a little bit ashamed of the mask. I might just quickly flip it around just so that you get an idea of just what a normal scene it looks like, at least in my house. So these hands to me are speaking to the fact that I'm going to need to be hands-on, I'm going to need to be taking action, I'm going to need to be taking things, with two hands and speaking up and showing up and being ready to jump on things rather than it being a passive sort of, 2 opportunities, 3 opportunities, do you see what I mean? Then we're looking at this really beautiful sparkling kind of whale hat, which is a part of a fancy dress costume on top of a giant chunk of selenite. So the giant chunk of selenite is all about purification and charging. It's the crystal that can charge other crystals and can cleanse. And having this whale on top, which is such a wise animal and speaks to the deep, intuitive feelings, a very feeling-orientated animal, all about ancient wisdom codes and the deep, deep depths of the sea. So the fact that it's a hat is telling me that to make really good decisions and to stay in a sort of charged, centered state, I need to be tapping into that deep intuition and letting my emotional wisdom guide my thinking, and that in that there's going to be a sort of return of investment energetically. It will charge, to really spend time in those feelings in order to charge them more and use them and paying attention to them. So I like that. And the unplugged socket that my eye was drawn to is very simple. Unplug, take time to step away from social media and all tech and tune into the raw elements of your environment. It's very simple. Just take time to specifically unplug. The last thing that my eye was drawn to, and this is what it's all about, like allowing yourself to notice, to allowing your mind to guide you to what could be meaningful to you. So I've got these 3 pumpkins that are looking worse for wear slightly, and it really made me think of how there's a time for everything. You know, there's a time for pumpkin carving and Samhain and Halloween. And now Halloween's passed, and we're moving towards my birthday on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, I guess, when this comes out. And now I feel like there's a time for taking those down and making soup or pumpkin pie, or just putting them outside for the birds if you're not really up to those things. And it just felt like a reminder that there's a time for everything, and to remain in flow and in tune with when it's time to switch things up and take advantage of the new currents. So for me, it's like tomorrow I'm going to be moving those off the mantelpiece and moving with the tides, and looking at that not just in the pumpkins but within my life. What's ready now to be paid attention to? What's the next phase? Looking ahead and moving with the times. The last thing was this plant that, bless it, it's been struggling ever since I got it, and it's just sat really square underneath my big mirror, and it makes me think that I need that the same way that plant needs that loving attention, maybe extra water, a little bit of I don't know, a spray with something helpful. That position so squarely underneath the mirror reminds me that my self-perception needs my nourishment, needs my attention. That mirror work, that sacred looking into your eyes and pouring love into yourself and recognizing your achievements and, you know, how lovable you are. Self-perception is literally just another word for self-esteem, and the way we see ourselves so very much impacts how we show up in the world and how happy we can be and how much we can allow into our lives. So it's telling me, don't forget to keep paying into that emotional bank account, that spiritual bank account, because it will pay dividends, and your soul needs you. Your soul is a wee bit thirsty, so give it some attention. So that's my example of how you can create a divining space anywhere, anyhow. You don't need to be on top of a Tibetan mountain, you don't need to be in a temple, you don't need to have any particular setup. You can literally just sit down and declare it that. And in declaring it, you open up to the ready available information that is always around you. Now again, I just want to bring that point to not obsessing. It's really important not to get too caught up in what could this mean, because that can start to have a bit of a detrimental impact. You need to still be able to move with the flow and enjoy life, and just be able to have this relaxed relationship with your environment. So that's why I think trust is so integral. Trust is so integral to intuition. It's so integral to having the right balance and attitude when it comes to developing this skill, basically this muscle. You need to learn to trust yourself and your hunches. And you need to be able to recognize when you're stepping into that need for control, which is fear-based, which is the ego mind trying to figure everything out. What does this mean? Is this right or is this wrong? That's the real tripping point. There is no right or wrong. It's going to be different for everybody. It is literally an open conversation constantly. It's a feedback system. Things change and rearrange like a kaleidoscope every time you change your energy or your perspective. You turn that little bit and the whole image changes. The whole world rearranges itself to you and your unique, ever-changing perspective. So I'd love you to experiment with that. I think it's really fun, and it's a really great way to exercise your ability to interpret your environment, and it opens you up as well to how much your environment and the world and the universe and reality is constantly communicating with you. And it's just about creating those conscious moments to take it in and commune, and to get used to trusting your impressions and not having to overthink it, and letting the symbolism of your environment speak to you in a meaningful way. Was there a last thing I wanted to say regarding that? There wasn't. It's just on the tip of my brain cell. Buggers, it's gone. Is it gone? Come on. Sorry. As you know, I don't like to fiddle around with my videos, so you're just going to have to wait for me, but the pressure is starting to do things to me. No, I can't remember, I'm too tired. But yeah, that's basically it. So I'd like you to play with your environment. I'd love it if you could let me know how you find it. Maybe send me a DM or tag me in a story, whatever feels right to you. And I look forward to hearing how you find it. If you have any questions as well, just let me know. But again, don't take it too seriously. Have a play, create different moments, try it in different environments, and just remember that there is no wrong or right answer. It will be different for everybody, and it's all about understanding that meaning is created. It's like this is what I wanted to say. It's like what we were saying yesterday about how the mind deletes and distorts according to what's important to it and to us. So in the same way, our mind, in its, we always think that we are almost these like totally sort of impartial observers, which is nonsense. And the truth is that we cannot but see meaning for ourselves constantly, everywhere. So that is how our unconscious mind, our higher self, guides us in maybe us kind of catching our eye on a particular part of the room, or and it reminds us of something important. So just learning to trust that what we've imprinted in ourselves is important is going to guide us, which is why it's also so important to do things like affirmations that implant positive points of focus, so that you start to train your mind to prioritize things that you actually want to prioritize, rather than old trauma responses or aversions, etc. So it's just that, basically. So to just remember that our unconscious mind is constantly speaking and reacting to the world. So creating those conscious moments where we divine and interact with our environment are really special, and we start to feel more in the driving seat of our own understanding. So give it a whirl, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you tomorrow on my birthday for day 3 of the challenge.